Hey everyone, welcome to the Roundtable with Vienna Whyte, Season 1, Episode 33. I'm your host, Millie Rouge from the band Vienna Whyte here in Edmonton, Alberta. This Roundtable is a YAG Music production. Thank you all for tuning into the show today. I'd like to introduce you to our very first guests, Raven and Fab. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Raven. I'm a singer-songwriter originally from British Columbia, but I'm based in Montreal now.
Hi, I'm Fabrice. You can call me Fab, and I'm a sound engineer, composer also, and I sing also a little bit. And I'm from Quebec, but I'm based in Montreal right now.
And together we collab on the project called Raven.
Raven. Okay, perfect. And Amber, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Amber. I'm a guitarist. I'm originally from Rhode Island. I'm now based in LA, and I mostly play progressive metal, and I'm now going under the stage name Avia, which was a very recent change, so yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Now, I want to quickly just get our audience to be filled in about kind of who you guys are as individuals. So Raven and Fab, can you guys kind of give us an introduction to maybe how, I know you might have had different separate journeys to where you got to with music, but a little background on how your project started and kind of where you are today with your project.
Yeah, for sure. You want to start?
Yeah.
We actually we didn't know each other, but we both moved to Montreal in 2018, coincidentally, like the exact same day almost. And about 3 weeks later, we met on a dating app. And Fab was just starting to work at some music studios in Montreal, and I was exploring the music scene in Montreal, and we just started making music together, and it just was a very natural thing.
Yeah.
And we released a single, and then we just recently released an EP together.
Mm-hmm.
So we make sort of like R&B, soul music.
Yeah, and we started with like a few years or 2 years ago. We started with one song,
Mm-hmm.
and it took us almost a year before doing a second one. And now we are on a roll, and we are just like I think we found our sound, and we just like we are so creative, like making songs, and like we have many things coming up.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have to say your accent really brings me home because some of my family's from Montreal. So just hearing you speak, I'm like, oh, you sound like my grandma. It's very cute. I love it. Now, Amber, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know you've kind of had some education and some schooling in music. So can you kind of bring us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I've been playing guitar since I was 6 years old. It's always been my first love and my passion. And then after I graduated high school, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. Mm-hmm. So I just graduated, I think yesterday was exactly 1 year ago. Oh, awesome. And I had a music business management degree. And now I just moved to LA like 2-3 months ago. And yeah, just going to keep going with the music.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good timing to move in 2 to 3 months ago before everything kind of
I know. I just moved, and then they were like, okay, shelter in place, guys. I'm like, great.
You can't even explore the city you moved to yet. You're just going to have to wait.
See any of it.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, you'll have lots of time, I'm sure, eventually. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. I want to dive into our topic for today, which is evolution of music. So we're going to be kind of chatting about how we go from being kids to liking our very specific styles and tastes to how we evolve into mature adults, if you want to call ourselves adults, and to being more into our different genres that we like. So my first question for all of you is, what music did you listen to as kids? So I'm just curious to know, when you were younger, what was your preferred genre? So Amber, I know you said you are in that more metal genre now. What was your genre like when you were a kid? What was your favorite things to listen to?
Oh, it was pop all the way. Gwen Stefani, Avril Lavigne, whatever was like top 40 on the radio.
Yeah, simple.
Really simple.
Yeah. How about you guys, Fab and Raven? What were some of your, I know you guys lived in kind of different areas of Canada, so I'm curious to see if that made a difference at all.
It's really funny. When I was young, but in my household, we were listening to a lot of stuff. But at some point when I was young, I really liked Linkin Park and Sum 41. And, but I also had a crush because I found this cassette at home, and it was like Gangsta Paradise of Coolio on it. And I really loved that song back then, even though I didn't know what they were saying. But so for a long time, my genre was more like around punk and rock. And then there was this collaboration of Jay-Z and Linkin Park, and I got more into rap music after, and hip hop.
That's amazing. How about yourself, Raven?
I grew up in a really small town in British Columbia, super rural. And most people just listen to a lot of country, folk, acoustic, some rock. I had pretty hippie parents, so I grew up young listening to a lot of like super, I would say, like hippie folk music, which I still love, but it's definitely not kind of the genre that I make now. And then as a teen, it was really similar to Amber, I would say, like a lot of Avril Lavigne, a bit of a punk phase as well, but a lot of pop music, top 40 music for sure. So
when did you guys kind of notice that your style of music and your taste was starting to change, and what kind of influences do you think made you kind of change into that shift? Raven, what were maybe some things that changed you from that like hippie music to more of your own style?
I think for me, it was my voice. I've been singing forever, but whenever I would try to sing more folk music, more singer-songwriter, I had a bit of a hard time because naturally I have sort of a deeper, more soulful voice, I think. And then I would sing more songs where my parents were listening to more like Norah Jones or more Chiba, which has more of like a jazz or funk element, and it just suited my voice so much better. And I think, so it was my voice that sort of led me into that journey of exploring a different genre or multiple different genres. I would say for sure.
Yeah. How about yourself, Fab? I know you said kind of that Jay-Z inspiration. Did anything else inspire you as well?
I started there, but also my friends. And as a teenager, I think I was around 14. One of my friends, he started his own studio in his bedroom, and he asked me if I wanted to rap on a song, and super random. So I tried, and I really liked it. And then I found out that I was good with like singing also because I was the one singing the choruses. And then I started like to do singing lessons, and then I got more into the R&B through the singing. But at first, I got into the hip hop, rap music through my friends and through rapping myself. But since I was singing more, I got more into R&B because I was like the singing alternative for more like hip hop.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Amber, I know you kind of got into the metal scene, so I'm curious to how that kind of evolved from being pop music, which is completely different, to that kind of genre.
I mean, it happened for me in middle school, like 7th grade. I remember, it was still when you used to just download stuff onto your little iPod Nano. And I remember hearing my best friend had downloaded this song. I don't even know why. It was Tears Don't Fall by Bullet for My Valentine. And I just remember hearing it and thinking I had never really heard anything like that. And it was just so captivating to me because it was just such a different emotion and such a different texture and a feeling. And after that, I was just mind blown. I was like, whatever this is, I need to keep hearing more. And it's just funny because now I feel like that specific band, Bullet for My Valentine, has kind of turned into dad metal, where it's just so popular. It's like you go to a con. I remember I finally saw them when I was in high school, and there was just like this 60-year-old dad like rocking out like, yes.
But yeah, that's a different experience.
But that's where it started, and it just kind of led on from there, because then with metal it's like, okay, guitar is like just as important as vocals. So now it's like, oh, cool, I'm important, I have some cool parts to play. And then I was like, I have to learn how to play these, and it just kept building on itself. I hear a cool guitar part, I want to learn it, or vice versa, like I'm here listening to the song for the guitar, or I want to play guitar because the song sounds really cool. And it just kept going back and forth until I started there was no coming back from it.
Yeah, you just kind of get sucked into it and you're like, well, now I'm a pop
Yeah.
artist, or now I'm a metal artist.
It was very similar to like Raven, how you were listening to things that didn't necessarily suit your voice as an instrument. It was the same thing for me. I'm listening to pop, which I love. I love the melodic aspect, but that's not what's for my instrument, especially now that pop is so electronic. There's no room for me anymore.
Yeah. I think too, it's interesting. I know like my parents grew up listening to a lot of country. So even now I'm a indie pop artist, but with a lot of my inflections, this like country twang will come out sometimes. And I'm like, excuse me, where did that come from? But it kind of just happens. And you don't realize how influenced you are by what you listen to when you grow up, and how it has some influences in your later on life too. So I'm curious to know, Raven, I know you said you started kind of in your smaller town, BC. Did you ever switch genres when you started performing? So I know for myself, I started as a singer-songwriter, like super indie slow songs. And I was like, I am sick of this. So I kind of switched to the indie pop with a little bit more electronic production. Did you ever have a switch like that for yourself when you moved to Montreal, or even before then?
Yeah, I would say actually it was a bit of a fast, weird switch in a way where I was playing back in my hometown. I was sort of back and forth between Victoria and my hometown because I was going to university and I was doing a lot of traveling. But whenever I was performing, it was very much like me and my guitar, because I played piano for a lot of years, but guitar is sort of my instrument, I would say. And so it was me and my guitar. And when it's you and your guitar, and I didn't know a lot of sort of like richer R&B chords that I love now, it was very much like acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. And then my really good friend, my best friend from forever ago, we just found ourselves back in our small town after graduating university, sort of in this like in-between phase. I was about to move to Montreal, and he said he had just finished music school in jazz and classical violin, actually, but he wanted to do a bit of production, and he very much wanted to do like a neo soul project, and he wanted a vocalist, and I love writing, and he said, do you want to collab on this like 3-song EP before we both like go our separate ways and not see each other for years again? And I was like, yeah, why not? So he did all the production on it, and I wrote the songs, and we did an EP and put it out just on SoundCloud. But it was very neo soul genre, and I was sort of like, I do a bit more R&B rather than neo soul production now, but it's very similar in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of inflections from that. But I think that's kind of where I was like, oh, okay, like my voice suits this so much more. I feel good when I sing it. The lyrics that I write are very much like somehow just sort of fit into that genre, and I didn't even know it. So it sort of just fell in my lap randomly, I would say. And then right after that, I moved to Montreal, met Fab, and it was just sort of like a natural progression since.
Transition.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know what made you want to move from British Columbia to Montreal, just out of random curiosity.
Yeah, for sure. It was actually, I actually hadn't finished my degree. I had taken a hiatus and traveled for a few years, and I wanted to finish my bachelor's. So I actually moved to Montreal to finish my bachelor's at Concordia University. Cool. So I did that for the first 2 years, and I just finished in January. So
amazing. Congrats.
But I also do music for sure, because this is incredible here.
It's got an incredible music scene. Like I know Amber's probably like, I don't know, because I'm not living in Canada, but we only have very few select cities that are very like bumping for music. So a lot of it's like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. Those are kind of our hot spots. So I'm unfortunately not in one of those. I mean, ours is still big, but it's relatively quite small. There's only 1 million people in Edmonton. Yeah.
It's music.
So it like, especially for like certain genres, like I know for I wouldn't say metal, but like more of the pop scene, the rap scene, it's not very vibrant here, just because of Alberta's a lot of like, we love country and we love indie rock, right? So a lot of that kind of other genre it's really difficult. It's hard to find your people in your community that really want to listen to you. So I mean, I've definitely thought a few times, I'm like, I'm going to move to Toronto. It's going to happen, but baby steps for me. So Amber, I was curious to know what artists have had the biggest impact on your music that you play today. What are some artists or some bands that have really influenced you?
Yeah, so it's funny because I'm working on my first album, and so now that like the songs are all written, we've started recording, so it's starting to really flesh out where we have the drum tracks, we have the bass, we have the guitar, I have the string tracks like almost done, and people are really starting to hear. And a couple people have come up to me like, do you guys know the movies by Hayao Miyazaki with like Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle? Yeah. So he's like the Walt Disney of Japan, and I grew up watching his cartoon movies, and they're amazing, and they're still my favorite movies. I watch them all the time, and he always has the same film composer on all of them. So then now, as I'm like doing all this heavy like progressive metal, there's still all these really composed elements, and some of that is just from going to music school and learning counterpoint and doing like 4-part counterpoint instead of writing bar chords or something normal. And then like listening to all these movies, it's all coming out, and now my drummer and bassist are calling my album Miyazaki metal.
Oh, that's so funny.
I never planned for it, but it just started coming out, and it's really cool. It's something I never thought would have come out. Like if anything, you would have told me like it sounds like Avril Lavigne, I would have been like, yes, I'm so obsessed with her. But I never consciously tried or listened to it, but it just came out.
That's really cool. That's really awesome, actually. I love that. Now, I know Raven and Fab, you guys kind of mentioned some of your influences. I know, Raven, you kind of said like Norah Jones, more of the neo-soul and R&B. But who are your biggest artists that you think had the most impact in both of your careers?
Me, I could say Boyz II Men, Ray Charles, Bill Withers, Chris Brown back in the day.
Yeah.
Otis Redding. Yeah, pretty much. These are a few names that comes to my mind. And recently, I really like Michael Kiwanuka. I really like Anderson .Paak. I like Drake. I like Ed Sheeran.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, all over the map. But maybe
all over the map.
And how about yourself, Raven? What are some of your biggest influences that have maybe impacted your voice or just your music overall?
Well, it's funny. I would say I grew up listening. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the band Morchiba. They're not super well known. They're like a 90s funk with a bit of hip hop production, smooth vocals. Sky is they're from England.
Okay.
And I grew up listening to them because my parents had a couple of their CDs and would play them like on repeat. But I never really thought of it as an influence. I loved their music, but then somebody a couple of years ago told me, oh, you know who you kind of sound like a little bit is the lead singer of Morchiba. And I was like, whoa, that's a weird full circle, because it was never like an intention, or like for me it was never a clear like this is my inspiration. But clearly subconsciously I picked up a lot from her and how they produce their music as well. So I would say that's one of the biggest ones. But also a bit of a surprise one, not like always in my mind. But yeah, a lot of different, it's hard to say. It is a bit all over the map like Fab, although I don't have as much of an excuse for it, because Fab also produces and mixes and records a lot of different artists. So his inspiration kind of, it makes sense that it's drawn from all over the map, because you produce a lot of different music, I would say, or like mix a lot of different music. So you kind of have to, right? Is that?
Yeah, I try to listen to a lot of stuff because I work with artists with so many genre and style. That like I try to always like resource myself with old school and new school music, and
I think that's really important as a producer, to be constantly, listening to new music, and also, being conscious of older music too, and being aware that everyone can kind of have that in between of where they sit. So I think that's really great that you do that, actually.
A lot of phases. Sometimes I'm more into so today it was a sunny day, so I was listening to African music today.
Cool.
Really rhythmic, and I was just feeling like, I don't know, happy. So it depends. It depends the
influence. Yeah,
I think every artist needs to do that. They need to just take a day where they listen to music that they're not used to and just explore, because I think a lot of the time we get really used to our artists that we really like and, you know, our kind of preferred genre. But I think when you explore and branch out, it's amazing. Now my next question for you guys is, what's your guilty pleasure of a music genre maybe that you listen to but you won't admit to other people that you listen to? So for me, this would probably be like country music. I mean, as much as I listened to it growing up, I didn't really have a huge passion for it when I was, you know, in middle school and high school. But I think it's such a summertime feel for me. Like every time I'm in the summer, it's a warm day, I'm like, it's time for some country music. Now, Amber, do you have any kind of guilty pleasures of music that you listen to, or genres that are different?
I'm not ever really guilty about it, but
you're honest.
I've loved Taylor Swift since her first album. Like, she's one of my number ones.
Yep. Me too.
Recently, I'm really into Dua Lipa. I think she's being so creative, because a lot of the pop things have moved towards hip hop in the last like 10 years, and I just never vibed with hip hop. So and I love pop, so it's just been hard for me to find pop music that I can still appreciate, because I don't vibe with hip hop. And then Dua Lipa, she's just coming out of the blue and just like bringing it on, so I'm loving her. And I listen to a lot of the Game of Thrones soundtrack.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of pop when I'm not listening to metal, which I don't listen to even too much. I'm listening to a lot of pop, and then a lot of like film scoring. And like when I saw the movie 1917, I listened to that soundtrack so much. And yeah,
that's amazing. I love those. And Raven and Fab, what are some kind of maybe guilty pleasures that you guys have for your music?
I'm right there with you. I think in terms of country, for me, it is a bit of a guilty pleasure, because like nobody I know listens to country. So it's not like I feel guilty for listening to it, but I can't just like put it on at a picnic in the park in Montreal. Like,
I could not imagine.
But it does take me back to like summers on the lake, you know, with your sundress, whatever you want to say. But it is for sure. It can be as soon as the sun comes out for the first time in like May, and it's warm-ish weather. I'm talking like 10 degrees. I don't know what that is but like, yeah, I would say for sure country. It does just have that feel good vibe, and the lyrics are so simple, but they just get right to the point somehow. I'm like, okay,
yeah. How about yourself, Fab?
I don't know if I have a guilty pleasure, but I just remember, I think it was 1-2 years ago, I went to the Backstreet Boys on Le Pen d'Abraham festival.
Nice.
So I don't listen to them all the time, but like at home, back then we had like the VHS and the cassette, and we had everything. So
yeah, you can get down to some Backstreet Boys. That's a good choice. I think that's a lot of people's guilty pleasures. They're willing to admit it when they're like at a bar or wasted. They'll admit they love the Backstreet Boys. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. That was actually our last question for the day. We are out of time here, but we were so lucky to have had you guys all on today. If you guys are at home watching this roundtable on YouTube, just make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. We do release shows Monday to Friday, so there's lots of content to watch. This chat will also be in podcast format, so if you guys want to hear this podcast version instead, just search up Vienna Whyte Podcast, and you'll find us. Now, before we head out, could I get you guys just to, again, say your artist name and where our audience can find you all on social media? So Amber, do you want to start it off?
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm just on Instagram, but that's just my name. It's Amber and Maldonado 1070, and my last name's really long and weird, but it's AMBER for Amber, and then MALDONADO 1070, and there I am.
Perfect. And Raven and Fab, can you guys tell us where we can find you guys?
Yeah, so our music, there are a few singles in our most recent EP called Some Kind of Solace. You can find it on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, everything. And on Instagram, I'm at Raven Winona Jane.
And you can find me under Fabrice Jean Music on Facebook and Instagram also.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you all have a great day. It was nice meeting you all.
You too.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Thank you.